Have you guys played the Squad Busters yet? If you have, you know this movement where your whole squads move together, fight enemies, break chests, fight other squads. So that's exactly what we're gonna make today. Let's quickly start. Okay, I'll start with the scene setup. So first thing first, we'll have to create a 3D object, which would be a plane. It's going to be our ground, actually, on which the player will stand. I'll scale it up a bit. Next, let's create a 3D object that's going to be our player. It's going to be of type capsule, and I'll name it player. Let's move it a little bit upwards. For this project, we'll need few packages. So let's go to Window and then go to Package Manager. In the Unity registry, let's search for Cinemachine. Okay, let's download this package right here. Once it's installed, let's in our main camera, let's add a component, Sign Machine, Brain. There it is. We don't have to change any settings here for now. Let's go to Sign Machine and Cinemachine, and let's create a Cinemachine camera. And over here, let's do tracking target. It's gonna ask for a tracking target. Let's give it a tracking target. It's going to be our player, and in the yeah, let's add another component, Cinemachine follow. And now let's give it an offset and y-axis first. Then let's okay, that's fine. Let's yeah, let's rotate this camera. Oops, my bad. Yeah. So it looks towards the player. Now, of course, if we'll move our player, it will obviously move with the camera will move with the player. And now inside the player, let's collapse these things. In our player, let's remove the capsule collider. We won't be needing it. Let's add a character controller. Let's not change any settings for now in character controller, but yeah, let's add a layer for our player. Let's call it squad as our player will hold our squad team, all the characters, and I'll add this squad layer to our player. Okay, now let's add a new component, new script. Let's name it player controller. Let's go to new script and there it goes. Okay, now that it's the script has processed. One thing I like to do, I'll make a new folder for scripts, and I'll add this player controller script inside that folder. Let's open that script now, and in the script, we'll obviously need a reference to our character controller. Let's name it controller. Then, yeah, let's move our character. Okay, we'll also need our input asset. You see this input system actions. So for that, we'll need to add a namespace. It's going to be Unity Engine dot input system. Okay, now we can access this input system action in our script. Let's name it input action asset. Sorry, let's name it inputs, and let's create another serialized field. We'll name it, this will be the input action, and we'll name it move action. Actually, it doesn't have to be a serialized field. In start, let's do move actions. Move action equals to inputs dot find action. This action would be move. So if I'll show you over here, you can see there is a player slash move here. So when we'll do the search, it should find it. Okay, it's showing some error. There's a parenthesis missing. Let's add this input system action asset over here, and also let's reference the character controller here. Now that is done, let's go to let's say controller dot move, and here we want it to move based on our move action. So we'll have to make a vector 2. Let's call it move. So move will be equal to move action dot read value. This value will be of vector 2. So now we'll get the value of our input when the player will click on W or S or A or D. Then this value will be set in the move in our vector 2 move. So over here we can simply do new vector 3. We'll get the x-axis move dot x. We don't want to move the player in the y-axis, so we'll say 0 here, and let's say move dot y here, so we can get the vertical axis as well. Now let's make a float. This float would be the speed at which we want our player to move. Let's make it serialized so we can change it through our inspector later on. So I'll multiply this with the speed, and same I'll do here as well. Let's give some default value to the speed. Let's say 2f. Okay. Now our character should be able to move. Okay, it's moving too damn fast, but at least it's working. That's a good news. So yeah, we can obviously reduce the speed value. Let's value may vary in your case, but let's say something like 0.05. I hope it's not too slow. Yeah, that's fine. It looks great now. Okay, now that that is done, let's go here and let's add our squad members in the game. Okay, one thing I'll do, I'll create an empty points and I'll name it squad points. These points will be the points at which our squad members will be standing. So I can add empty points here. Let's call it a point. Okay, let's say the first point will be here. So the first squad member of our team will instantiate here or will come here, will stand here. And then let's move the second point a little bit farther. Then the third point here. Let's, by the way, I'm clicking on Command D to duplicate these points. So you can see we already have like 5 points now. So that's fine for now. Let's focus on the other functionality. Let's add a empty point and let's call it squad. So the squad parent will hold the squad members basically. In the squad, let's add another 3D object. It will be capsule. We don't need the capsule collider. You can remove that. And let's add a component squad controller. This will add a new script. Again, I'll add the script in a scripts folder. Now let's open it. Alright, so inside the squad controller, first thing we would want our player controller's reference. Let's make it serialized field for now. Then we'd again want a character controller that will move our squad member basically. Again, let's call it a controller, and then let's add speed for speed. There will be an index for the for our squad member. Let's call it squad value. This squad value will be setting in the start function. The squad value will be equals to transform dot get sibling index. So based on the sibling index, we'll be setting this value. Okay, now let's do if first thing we want our squad member to be on his point, the empty points we have just set. So we want like the first squad member to stand on this point, then the second one on this point. So what I'll do is I'll go to player, I'll make a serialized field, I'll make a list of transforms, and in this transform I'll call it squad points, and these will be public because we want it to access in here. So yeah, let's say player controller dot squad points squad value. This value for our this player, the value will be 0. For the next squad player, it will be 1, and so on. It's sort of like it's giving us the index of the hierarchy. Okay, so okay, let's do squad value dot position. We want the difference first, so let's use vector3 dot distance. We want distance between the point and our squad member position. So let's do that. If this difference is bigger than 0.1f, in that case we want our player to move towards this point, like a squad player to move towards this point. Let's make him look towards the point first. So for that I'll do look at, sorry, it will be transform dot look at, and the look at will be to a new vector 3, and in this vector 3 the x will be our player controller squad point dot position dot x, and then our y will be transform dot position dot y, and the z value will be again like this, player controller dot squad point dot position. Okay, now we should be looking towards this point. like our squad member should be looking towards this point, but we also want him to move towards this point. So for that, what I'll do is I'll say controller dot simple move, and here I'll do transform dot forward because we're already looking towards that point. I just want to move forward. Let's give it a speed. Let's say 0.5f. So I'm hard coding the speed for now, but later on we'll be using the speed here. But yeah, let's first try this out, how it's working. Okay, let's add the references. We need a character controller. Let's give it a character controller. We need a player script. So let's give a player script here. Now, one thing which is really necessary is that we made a new layer for our squad. So over here also you can see we are on that layer. Now, what I want to do is I want to exclude that layer from the collision matrix, as there will be a lot of squad members and we might collide with each other. That may cause a lot of issues. Here also in the player object, I'm doing the same. Now I'll duplicate it few times. I'm duplicating the player a few times. And inside the player, we just made a squad points variable. Let me log this inventory so I can drag all these points at once over here, and that's done. Now let's see if the squad member moves towards their points. Okay, they're moving towards their point and they're standing. So one thing I'll do is I'll increase the speed here, as the speed was 0.5f for our squad members. Let's use this variable now, and so we can set the speed. I'll also give it a default value. So let's do it equals to 2f. Okay, like you can see, it's trying to follow. One thing I'll do is I'll go to the player object and I'll disable the mesh render of it, because we are only using this player object to move the whole squad together and don't really want to render anything there. And then okay, I also changed this value to 0.5f, where we are checking the distance between the squad point and the position of the squad player, these squad members. Now if I'll try it out, okay, so they have reached their point and the whole squad is moving at once. So that's good. That's what we wanted for our first step. Now what I'll do is I'll add a canvas here. Let's go to UI and add a raw image itself. So it will also add a canvas and an event system. Okay, so the canvas won't be of the screen space overlay. Like you can see, it's overlaying on the screen. We want it to be a world space canvas. It's inside the player, as you can see. The canvas is inside the player. Now we want to position the canvas. Okay, so let's scale down the raw image here, and let's also rotate it to 90 degrees. Okay, minus 90. And let's move it a little bit downwards at the footsteps of a squad. Okay, there's more space here. Yeah, that's good. And this canvas size would be a little bigger. The image size would be a little bigger. And in the image, I have a simple circle image, which I'll be adding. Like you must have seen in the squad busters as well. There's an area in which the squad can attack. If this area, if anything, a target or a chest is or an enemy is in the range, then the squad members go towards it and attacks. So now you can see this circle will move with the squad. Okay, now to get this range, like what we want next is we want some kind of target within this radius. So for that, what I'll do is I'll add a sphere object. Let's go to 3D object sphere. Let's call it attack range. Yeah, like that. And let's scale up this sphere just that much. Let's bring it down a little bit. Yeah, so anything that will be in the sphere, we'll make this trigger first of all, the sphere controller, and we can disable the mesh render. So anything that will be in the radius, we'll be saving that that object. Let me show you how. Let's add another script. Let's call it attack range. Again, I'll move the script inside the script folder, and let's open the script in VS Code or whichever editor you're using. Now in the script, I'll remove all these things. We don't need them. Let's say on trigger enter. This will be a void on trigger enter. Over here we'll get a collider. Let's name it. Okay, let's name it collider itself. If collider dot compare tag target. If it's a target, we'll be doing something. We'll just log it out. And also if it exits the range, then again we want to know. let's do debug.log, and let's simply log the collider itself, and we'll do the same here, and we'll do collider has exited. Okay, let's see the debugs for that, but we'll have to add few objects with the target tag, as we are checking for the target tag. So let's make a 3D object cube. Let's say this cube will be our chest. I'll name it chest here. Let's move it down. Yeah, let's position it somewhere here, and in the tag section let's add a new tag. We already know we want to name it target. Make sure that T is capital as it is in the script as well. And now let's add this target here. Okay, you can open the console window to see the logs. We have already set the spear as a, wait a second, it's not working. Okay, it is a trigger, but we have to add a rigid body to it, because to detect collision we need a rigid body. Let's disable use gravity and let's make it as kinematics. Okay, now you can see we got a log for our chest object. When I'll exit it, it says has exited. Okay, so it's working fine. Now we, instead of logging it, we want to save these targets somewhere. So in the player controller itself, I'll make a new serialized field. I'll make it a public because we want to access these points. Like our squad members would need these points to move towards it. Let's make it a type transform, and let's call them target points. Yeah, like so. Now it doesn't have to be serialized. In fact, we can hide it in inspector. We don't really want to see these points here. Anyways, we are adding them through the script. So in the attack range, we'll want, let's say serialized field. We want our player controller, because we'll be saving these points, these objects in them. Let's say player controller dot target points dot add. We're adding to the list, so we'll be adding collider dot transform like this. Okay, we'll do the same here, but instead of adding, we already know it's added. We want to remove it this time, so instead of add, do remove. Okay, that's done. Now if we can check if else if okay, first we want to know somehow whether the player is moving right now or it's not, because if it's moving, the squad members will move with it, but if it's not, then we won't want our squad to move towards stay in stationary position. Instead, we would want it to move towards the target. So let's create a boolean to check this. I'll also make it public because we want to access it in the squad controller script. So the moving boolean, let's change its value. Let's check controller dot velocity 3. So let's do velocity dot x, and let's do mathf dot absolute, because we don't care if it's a negative or a positive value. We just want to check if it's greater than 0. Let's also do greater than 0.1f just in case. Let's copy this. We'll add and condition here, and instead of x it will be z. We want to see if it's moving in the x and z axis. If our player is, then we'll make moving equals to true, and in else, let's make it else if. Let's say else if moving is equals to true. In that case, we want it to be false. Okay, great. Now in the squad controller over here, we only want to move towards these squad points if our player is moving. So we'll do controller dot moving equals to true, and if it's not moving, that means we'll be this condition will be called. In this condition as well, we want to move towards the chest. Let's say if you're near the chest, in the radius of the chest to radius, I'm hardcoding this value, but the range will be different for mage and for archers, and different for barbarians, knights. So this range will be changing the range later on. Instead of this, we want to check the distance from our transform from the squad member with the player controller dot target points. Let's say 0 for now, and dot position. Yeah, now we'll do the same thing. We'll look towards the target point and move towards it. So for this, I'll again do transform dot forward, but in the look at, instead of squad point, this time it will be target point. And again in the z axis as well. Yeah, so that should work. Let's try it out. Also, we want to add an and condition here. In this and condition, we only want to move towards the target point 0 if there is a target point at all. So what we'll do is we'll check if the target point dot count is greater than 0. That means there is some target in the range. Only then we can do the movement towards it. Instead, if there is no target, then of course the squad members will be stationary. Okay, let's try it out first. Let's see. Hopefully it works. Okay. Okay, there is some error here, like the moving part is not getting called the way I wanted it to. And I also got a null reference. It's in the okay, I see. So first of all, in the attack range, we haven't added the player controller. Okay, let's give it a player controller. So that where we are making moving true, we are using and condition, but instead this should be an or condition, because even if the x-axis, if the player is moving in the x-axis, still it is moving, or in the y-axis it is still moving. So that was the issue. Let's try it again once. Okay, so it's moving. The squad members are moving towards it. It's moving towards the chest. They're trying to come back towards their point, but their speed is really slow. Yeah, so of course I'll increase the speed of the squad members a little bit. You can play around with these values to see what fits best for your game. Okay, now it looks good. Okay, so this was the first part of the series. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you learned something. Thank you.